is moving. It calls attention in a way that perhaps other activities in the normal flow of life don't quite call our attention, begging to be observed and thought through. And all this is to say that in spite of its bodily immediacy, in a way that I think makes dance very prominent as an object of study, I want to say up front that the notion that dance is somehow a universal language because of the fact that it's bodily and we have bodies, so it's all accessible. This is a phrase that makes my blood boil because the assumption that because we have and are bodies that we should somehow be able to translate in some kind of universalist way what is intended and what's happening through dancing is a very naive assumption, and it's very unfortunate because it tends to reproduce this dualism between the bodily as somehow grounded and universal and something that we can all access and understand versus spoken language, and this polarizing between movement, gesture, and spoken word written text is one that I've had to confront in this project that I'm going to discuss as a background assumption that lingers always there even when we're trying to overcome it. But just to say that dance needs to be treated as a vehicle for meaning making in its own right. We can't assume that it is somehow easier to access, easier to interpret, is less open to multiple layers of meaning than spoken language. So with all this in mind, I'd like to take a somewhat unusual direction in presenting my current interdisciplinary project for discussion for the rest of this seminar. And I have to admit that I'm already having some really second thoughts about this, but here we are. And you may be just as uncertain as I am in this moment as to why I'm doing this. And in fact, there's a feeling inside that makes me feel like I've swallowed a tree. But as I hope I'll convey, there's a certain openness that comes through movement. A feeling of potential for transformation that some people might even relate to as spiritual. But fear not, we will return to the standard seminar format fairly soon. Here you say. Thank goodness for that. I'm not sure if I should be moved by this or I should hide my head in shame for you. But you must watch and you must listen. If you feel yourself drift off, come back to this present moment, because dancing bodies demand attention. So what is this? What this is, what this was, is something that one person in the audience hopefully will recognize. It was the sequence of movement was co-constructed by 12 people in a workshop on Tuesday on physical storytelling, led by a contemporary performer, Caravan. And I'll get to how we got to these workshops in a moment when I give a bit more of the backstory of this project. But this was the end of a workshop where we'd been moving for the better part of 4 hours, thinking through inspirations for different kinds of qualities. The overall aim of the workshop was thinking about how we can characterize and tell a story through physical movement, but not in a terribly literal way. So a lot of the workshop was about using ideas, in this case we used prompts of the elements, so we thought about what would fire feel like in the body, what would water feel like in the body, would it feel different if it's a meandering brook versus an ocean versus a tsunami? What happens when the water starts freezing or it starts crashing into other bodies of water in a space, because of course we're all moving around together. And towards the end of this workshop, we stood in a circle. We were 12 participants in addition to the workshop leader. Each of us just came up with a gesture, so we put together the series just going around the circle. And then the concluding part was actually adding the text to it. But the theme of the day had been very much about letting the body speak, trying to shut down the internal dialogue that was always about decision-making and evaluating what the movement needed to be and needed to convey. So we each took a turn going around the circle and in the moment trying to basically give some kind of narrative text to that sequence of movements. So some of these movements, I think at the time this movement came for me was, I think, scraping rats off of my feet. For other people, I think this was a bird. There were trembling, walking through the jungle. So there were any number of potential interpretations of that movement, but the idea was that the movement was guiding the text.